Well, everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and compare the iPhone 13 mini against the iPhone 12 mini and see which one is the better iPhone for you. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these iPhones, the links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, one thing I've been saying since the inception of the iPhone 13 mini, and I'm talking since the day this thing came out, was even announced, I was saying that this was the iPhone that should have been the 12 mini when it first came out. This thing fixed pretty much all the issues that I had with the 12 mini. And if this is truly in fact the last mini series of iPhones Apple ever makes, I think this is a great ending point. Apple can continue to sell this thing for the next few years, and I think that's going to be a great choice Apple were to make. But I think the 12 mini, for it being a little bit older, it has become a much cheaper phone in the used market, and it could potentially have made this phone an even better deal. So when it comes down to it, these are the types of things you kind of have to think about. But if you have all the money in the world and you want a small phone, the 13 mini by long and large margins is the better iPhone here. And hopefully I can explain it to you a little bit further. So starting off with the outside, the iPhone 12 mini, in my opinion, they look almost identically the same. You have a 5.4-inch Super Retina XDR OLED panel on both of these phones, but they are a little bit of different styles. Now, when the 12 mini came out, I was happy with it. I think it was a great design, but my big complaint was the battery life, and we'll get into that in a second. The only difference between these two displays, besides them maybe looking a little bit better on the 13 mini, is with the notches. So you're getting a little bit smaller of a notch on the 13 mini than on the 12 mini. Both these phones do not have ProMotion, no fingerprint sensors in the display, nothing like that. So the main difference here is with the notches. However, it's not a difference at all for the most part because you're not really getting any features or any extra screen real estate. You're getting a little bit of screen real estate, but it's just all taken up with the status bar and you are not getting any more extra features or anything like that. So there really isn't even a point for them to reduce the notch size if they weren't going to remove it, in my opinion. So that was one thing that kind of stood out to me for the most part. They both have lightning ports at the bottom, flat sides on both, and they both have glass backs on the back, which is really nice. They both have the MagSafe capability on the back too, which is really cool. So if you're wanting to go ahead and use some of those MagSafe accessories, well, we do have that type of capability within both these devices, which is really nice. Now, we also have dual camera setups on both these devices as well. So I'll go ahead and hit on them right now in a second, but I will say with the outside, IP certification on both. You're getting pretty good build quality on both as well. The colors you can choose from are almost the same, but I think there's like one more color you can choose on the iPhone 13 mini. And pricing wise, brand new from Apple, $599 for the iPhone 12 mini. And with the 13 mini, it is $699 right now. So those are pretty much the main key takeaways, at least from the outside, the prices, and the way these phones have been holding up for the last few years. Now, in terms of the camera setup, personally, I think this is not a crazy big difference, but it is kind of siding for the 13 mini again. So they both have dual camera setups like I mentioned before. You have a wide angle lens and an ultra wide camera, which personally I think is great. Having that type of capability of being able to zoom in and zoom out a lot is awesome. Now with the 12 mini, I liked when this phone came out because it was a cool little touch. Having that smaller phone with pretty much the same camera as the other phones was really cool, and I think personally that was awesome. Now, you have 4K at 60 on the back, you have 4K at 60 on the front, which is really cool. And if you're planning on taking photos or videos, you have portrait mode, you have a lot of modes built in. I mean, there's not a lot of modes compared to like Android phones, but it's still a good camera. With the iPhone 13 mini though, the main key takeaway and pretty much the only difference I can think of is cinematic mode. You are getting this new cool cinematic mode, experience, which is pretty much the ability of blurring out the background even more. And if you've ever seen a DSLR camera, it's almost like portrait mode for video. That's essentially it. It will blur out the background even more of your video, which I think is cool. However, after using it for the last year on my iPhone 13 Pro and even on my iPhone 13, it really hasn't been holding up that well, to be honest. It hasn't really been that strong of an experience, and I truly do feel like Apple could have probably done a little bit of a better job. At least for the last few years, I pretty much always had to revert back to the iPhone, standard video mode. So hopefully in the future Apple can fix this, but as of right now, this is what we're rocking with. But overall, the 13 mini is a better camera, but I think the 12 mini is still very good as well. Like, there's really not that big of a difference here. So in terms of that covers it up there. In terms of software and the longevity of both these phones, As I mentioned before, the 13 mini, with it having a newer chipset and with it being a newer phone, you were pretty much going to be getting a longer lasting phone from the 12 mini. Now, is this a crazy big deal? Absolutely not. I think the 12 mini is still going to be supported for many more years to come. And realistically speaking, whatever features come for the 12 mini and the 13 mini, they're going to be side by side. So it's not like the 13 mini is probably going to be able to do anything that the 12 mini can't. And we just saw this with iOS 16. Apple ended up giving a lot of phones the ability of seeing the battery percentage in the top right corner within the notch, the iPhones with notches. Unfortunately, these two iPhones did not get it. So for better or for worse, if the 13 mini gets a feature or doesn't get a feature, the 12 mini is probably not going to be getting that feature either. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in terms of performance, these two phones are honestly very similar as well. So they're both A series chipsets, but the iPhone 12 mini has that Apple A14 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone 13 mini has that Apple A15 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM as well. So starting with the 12 mini, personally, I've been using this phone for a long time. I feel like the 12s were really good in performance. However, there were just some other weird things that came out with it. I think they weren't as efficient as some of the other phones. So I think when it comes down to the battery life, it didn't really utilize the chipset that well with the battery life in my opinion. But I do think with the iPhone 13s, that's where things started taking a completely different approach in my opinion. However, with the performance between both, I truly do feel like there's not that big of a difference between the performance of both these phones. Now, as coming from someone like me, I've used this phone, all the 12s and all the 13s, I've used these phones from a basic standpoint of just, app opening speeds. I've used these phones on an everyday basis, and I played very intensive games for my third channel on these specific, phones as well. And from everything that I've tested, these are very good performing phones. Realistically speaking, on the 12 mini, anything I've ever wanted to do with it, it's handled it like a champ, which is awesome. Now with the iPhone 13 mini, I think this has been a great phone too. This is a better phone in the performance standpoint. The only thing that kind of strikes me weird though is that sometimes I feel like the display isn't fully at the 60 Hz. Like I feel like my iPhone 10 has a smoother display even though that's also 60 Hz than this thing. So I find that very weird, but I guess we're going to see what happens in the future. But as of right now, I will definitely tell you the iPhone 13 mini is a much better phone in terms of pretty much everything than the 12 mini. But I would also say the performance is, better on the 13 mini too. But I think the 12 mini, for its size, at first shocked me more that it was, the great of a performing phone as it was. But I will definitely say the 13 mini is the better one here. Now in terms of battery life, again, this is another key takeaway. The iPhone 13 mini is the better battery life here. This was the biggest selling point in my opinion. Now, the thing that Apple says on their website is that the 12 mini gets 15 hours of video playback and the iPhone 13 mini gets 17 hours of video playback. Now that's from Apple's mouth. I would probably say the 13 mini is going to net you much more than just 2 hours of video playback more than the 12 mini, but I'm sure Apple doesn't want to say the 12 mini is 10 hours or whatever. But I will definitely tell you when it comes down to both, the 13 mini is a much better battery life than the 12 mini as well. And that's why I kind of stated, in the beginning of this video, and to kind of wrap it up, I think the 13 mini, if you have the money, is 100% the better phone here. You're going to be getting a much better caliber of a device. It's going to have a ton of capability. And I'll definitely say if it came down to one of these devices, this is probably the device I would recommend more than really any of the other ones, from the 12 mini, from the smaller phones that some other phone manufacturers make. This is a solid option and I really do like it. Is it perfect? Maybe not. It still has a notch. It doesn't have 120 Hz, but I think the 13 mini is just so much better than the 12 mini, and that's just kind of how I see it as of now. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.